Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So I had a chance to finish Iron Fist, so I wanted to do a video to address some of the issues I think it had and how they can fix that in Season 2. There's going to be a whole bunch of Marvel stuff happening. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get it and click that bell to enable alerts so you don't miss out on anything. It's going to be great, but there were a couple key issues that I had with Iron Fist. I don't think it's complete trash like a lot of critics said, but there are really like 4 key areas that I feel like they could have done so much better. The biggest complaint is that they could have done better given the stuff they've done before. So 1, we have to talk about the story, 2, we have to talk about the characters, 3, we have to talk about the music, and 4, we have to talk about their execution of the martial arts. So I think I can do most of this without doing crazy spoilers for the later episodes, but later in the video when I do have to address specific things, I'll try to give spoiler warnings just in case. So the story, I think they suffer from a lot of Iron Man 2 problems, only crammed into a much shorter amount of time. So you wind up with kind of like 6 episodes of story stretched out into 13 episodes. There are a lot of people who responded to this with like, hey, why didn't they do 8 episodes of Luke Cage, 8 episodes of Iron Fist, and then 13 episodes of Defenders, the big crazy Avengers-style team-up that we've all been waiting for, instead of the other way around. There's only 8 episodes of Defenders, so Iron Fist starts off with the whole mystery about who is Danny Rand, proving his identity. They spend way too much time drawing that out. What I would have rather have seen is him just step onto the scene within the first episode, maybe 1.5 episodes, them decide, okay, this is Danny Rand, he's the Iron Fist, and then immediately within that first arc, start pursuing the big goal of taking down the Hand. He says he's the mortal enemy of the Hand. The Hand is sort of presented as the Netflix's version of Hydra, the crazy organization that crosses over between all the shows, surfaces all the biggest villains, and serves as the source of some of the more mystical things that they've introduced in what is otherwise a very street-level, real-world universe. So they spend a little too much time on the real world trying to prove Danny's identity before they really push into the cool Iron Fist mythology and the stuff that you really want to see. And even though the back half of the season does make up for some of the lack of plot in Luke Cage's back half of the season, that was even more plotless than Iron Fist, it still meanders through about 8 episodes of plot in 13 episodes, so they really should have just shortened the episode count. The real problem, I think, is in how they set all these shows up, the way they issued the contracts when Netflix made the deal with Marvel initially. They contracted them to do Iron Fist, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, then the Defenders team up within a certain period of time, and sometimes you just need more time to figure a show out, to train the cast, to do the really crazy action scenes. So I think they had a lot more time to figure out Daredevil before they actually shot that show, and it has the benefit of being first. So it's like if there were any problems, they had time to work them out before season 2. So by the time you get to the 5th season of a Netflix show, remember there were 2 seasons of Daredevil already, you expect it to be just so much better than everything else that came before. But when they rush things a little bit, or they don't trust themselves to change the story to make certain elements better, like they changed some of Daredevil's comic book story, and I think they didn't trust themselves as much with changing the Iron Fist comic book story. There were a couple key comic book changes that I'll explain when I do a more spoilery explainer video for the ending of the series. There were some interesting things that they did. I love the comic book stuff that they did. But moving on to the characters, so one of the biggest problems I think that it suffers from is that you don't really understand what Danny Rand's motivation is at the very beginning. Why did he leave Kunlun? You almost don't find that out at all. They sort of imply what that reason is towards the end of the series when a couple other characters come in, but they never outright tell you. And even if you've read the comics, you know his origin story, you can make some guesses as to why that was, but the TV show shouldn't make you have to read the comics in order to understand character motivation. They should spell that out at the very beginning. Like the opening scene should tell you everything you need to know about the character, and they just don't do that, so he doesn't get the character development that he needs. So it's really hard to understand who Danny Rand is, especially if you haven't read the comics. Then we gotta talk about the Meachums. So they spend way too much time with these characters in Rand Corporation, which is arguably the least important part of what this series should be. Rand Corporation is almost meaningless to Danny. He uses it to do the things that he wants to do, but he doesn't like spending time there. It's not like he really enjoys being in a boardroom. So I like where they got these characters to, but for like the first half of the season, Warden Meachum was almost like this mustache twirling villain. He doesn't get more complicated and interesting till way later in the series. The same thing happens for Joy Meachum. They leave her in this really interesting place, like you're really excited for her in season 2, but you're never really sure how she feels about Danny or all this other stuff stuff that's going on. She's so tied up with the Rand Corporation storyline, and that's like the least important part of the series. So what I'm hoping for season 2 is they just get rid of most of those corporate scenes and they allow these characters to mix with the more mystical elements of Danny Rand. Colleen Wing was a great character, but she's so underwritten because they spend so much time at Rand Corporation early on, and she has very little to do with that storyline. So I think she was a victim of that. Claire Temple was fantastic. I love Rosario Dawson in all the series. Some of the best moments were of the two of them just doing things on their own. Moving on to the music. So while I didn't expect the music to be quite as good as the music of Luke Cage, there was just like a level of authorship with that series. The way the showrunner talked about how important music was to the character, to the community of Harlem. They did such a good job of fitting the music into the context of the scenes that were happening, the character arcs, and I feel like that just didn't happen for Iron Fist. The music always felt like some ancillary thing that they just added on. So moving on to the last thing, and this is probably most comic book fans' biggest complaint with the series that I think they can totally fix for season 2, is the martial arts. So they do a lot of cool things. They did like the Transporter Axe fight, they did some Ip Man, they did Kiss of the Dragon, they did Drunken Master, they did Bruce Lee, Enter the Dragon, and The Raid. All these crazy, awesome action martial arts films. But it feels like they rushed every aspect of the production of this series. Like, oh my god, we gotta get it out on time. So maybe they didn't have enough time to train the actors to make them look like they could fake these amazing martial arts sequences. Nobody expects an actor to be as good as Bruce Lee. Like, unless you're Donnie Yen, that's just not gonna happen. But what you want is for them to be able to lock the camera off for a crazy fight scene and then cut to their faces for reactions later. You don't want all the cuts that they had to put in this. And usually they do that to hide stunt doubles. And while they had a lot of cool ideas, I feel like what'll happen is by the time we get to season 2, they'll just keep these actors training year round so that the martial arts are way, way better when we come back. Just for example, here's a little bit of the hallway fight, the example of, like the Hatchet Transporter fight that they were trying to do, as well as the Drunken Master fight, which I actually feel was creatively a little bit more interesting.
Care for the taste.
And honestly, I feel like even if the story isn't the best story ever, as long as you can nail the martial arts, because Iron Fist should be the most skilled martial artist in the Marvel Universe next to Shang-Chi, depending on how you feel about that. So when you see martial arts like this, you're like, hey, what happened? This is supposed to be super badass. Like, even if you don't care what the story is, it should have the most amazing fight sequences. Into the Badlands is a really good example of a series that has like a pretty okay story, but the martial arts and the fight sequences are amazing. So if they can do that on cable television and they spend twice as much making the Netflix series, they should have the time and the money to get it right. But again, I didn't hate the series, I just feel like they could have done a way better job with it, and it's all problems they can totally fix by season 2. But let me know in the comments, what were your biggest issues with this series? And what's going to happen? I know you have a lot of questions about the ending, all the Easter eggs, how this fits into the Marvel Universe. I'll do those videos next week after more people have a chance to watch the series. But no worries, there was a lot of really cool stuff they did towards the end of the series. So I'll try to get those videos out as fast as possible. But we got Walking Dead coming up next, and I'll post updates about the video schedule in the comments. So just check the top pinned comic that I post. While you wait for that, click here for new Black Panther footage and click here for new Guardians of the Galaxy 2 footage. Thank you so much for watching. Let's high five. I'll see you guys in the next video.